I've been in Chicago for 6 days, where my father is in the hospital recovering from surgery to remove his cancerous bladder. He lies in a bed, connected to a monitor displaying his vital signs in an array of bright colors: Kelly green, canary yellow, fire engine red, artist formerly known as Prince Purple. I'm responsible for other vital things. I report each day with coffee and newspaper in hand. My father has read the Chicago Tribune every morning for as long as I can remember, and while he's laid up, it's my job to bring him a paper and keep him company while he reads it, along with conveying the colorful data and other medical info to family members, apologizing to the nurses when Dad tees off over perceived incompetence, making arrangements for his transfer to a rehab facility, and trying to make his condominium livable for when he finally gets home. The state of our father's condo when he went into the hospital was a complete shock to me and my 4 siblings when we first saw the photos my sister sent the day of his surgery, with comments like, narrow path to Dad's recliner, blood-stained carpet, and guest bath filled with boxes. With a combination of horror and guilt, we realized that acquiescing to Dad's request we meet elsewhere when we came to visit, we hadn't seen the inside of his condo since shortly after my mom died, years ago. Somehow my siblings and I didn't put 2 and 2 together. Though we knew Dad had problems letting go of stuff, we didn't figure out complaints about the heater or the kitchen sink not working hid a darker truth. Dad didn't get things fixed because he didn't want anyone, even a repairman he didn't know, to see evidence of borderline hoarding. The end result being a cold apartment and a kitchen sink so backed up, he's been doing his dishes in a plastic bin, dumping the water into the toilet afterwards. So for the last 6 days, I've gone back and forth from hospital to condo and back again, tackling the accumulated detritus of my dad's life, sending my siblings pictures of bags stuffed with clothes Dad will never wear, boxes of newspapers and magazines he'll never read, God knows what else. I arranged for carpet cleaning and heater repair. I discover a useful hoard of Windex, Clorox, and Mr. Clean under the kitchen sink, and go to town on every surface I can find. Of course, it's not all on me. My siblings are also committed to be there for our dad. My older brother lives in town, so he's the first point of contact. My oldest sister was there for the surgery and the first post-op days. I've got the second shift, and at the start, things go relatively smoothly. Dad reads his paper, does the crossword, answers Alex Trebek before anyone buzzes in, grouses about the food. With a look of determination, he paces around the hospital with his walker and IV pole, pale green gown clipped together in the back, making sure everything gets moving, he says, so he can get out. But then, post-op day 7, the day before he's supposed to move to rehab, things start going wrong. Dad's abdominal pain, which we're told is to be expected after major surgery, gets worse and worse. He stops eating, stops pacing the hall, develops leg pain. A scan shows a blood clot, which could travel to his heart or lungs, so a blood thinner is prescribed. And then, when I arrived post-op day 9, I learned Dad's belly pain has increased exponentially. He doesn't want to sit up, let alone walk. Another scan is ordered, and it reveals a mistake has been made. Stitches inside didn't hold, and the contents of my father's GI tract are spilling into his body. He is literally full of shit. The green, yellow, red, and purple numbers flash and buzz. He's moved to an ICU floor, and suddenly everything changes. Dad is getting weaker. He needs surgery to repair what went wrong and clean him out, but a second surgery now, so soon after the first one, presents a host of risks. The blood thinner is a problem. It needs to be stopped, but the clot's still there. They need to put a filter in his groin, change his meds, monitor his organs. I'm taking notes, trying to keep up with unfamiliar terms, consultations, and changes in the glowing array of green, yellow, red, and purple. Dad's temperature is rising, his heart rate increasing. Within hours, his kidneys start shutting down. Sepsis joins the list of concerns. Texts are flying, colliding in the ether sphere. I call my siblings, my husband, my kids. My middle sister, who lives in St. Louis, says she's getting in the car. My brother, who lives in town, is on his way. The surgeon tells me the surgery should be scheduled ASAP, but there's the issue of the blood thinner. Another doctor comes in and asks about my dad's bladder function, and we have to explain he no longer has a bladder, and the fact that this doctor doesn't know this sort of freaks me out. I call the woman my dad's been seeing, and she suggests maybe it's just his time, and we should prepare ourselves. This completely freaks me out. But I also must consider she could be right, because it is clear from the conversation spinning around me, my father is dying. The next few hours are a blur. My brother arrives, signatures are obtained, the lights keep flashing, doctors and nurses coming in and out, the surgery is moved up. In a flurry of activity, tubes are gathered, disconnected, and reconnected, wheels unlocked, and before I can say goodbye, a tech and 2 nurses wheel Dad out of the room. Silence descends. Time slows. My brother asks when I last ate, and I realize I haven't had anything other than half a cardboard bowl of Starbucks oatmeal that morning on the way to the hospital. I remember the oatmeal was runny because I added too much water. I remember I spilled my coffee while adding milk, and the Starbucks was out of Chicago Tribunes, and I was worried about not having one for my dad until I arrived at the hospital and realized he was in no condition to read the paper or do a crossword puzzle. My sister arrives just before a nurse comes to tell us we can go see our dad in pre-op. The nurse says this quietly, reverently, the unspoken message, say what you need to say just in case. And I recall a conversation I had with my mother years ago, after her co-worker's eldest daughter died in a freak accident in her high school parking lot, how the girl's younger sister had been fighting with her that morning over a curling iron. And the younger sister felt so much guilt over this. Be careful what you say when you part from those you love, my mother said. Always end with something loving or kind. You never know what will happen. My father and I have a complicated relationship, defined by his expectations I'm destined for greatness and my seeming inability to ever achieve enough. But I love my dad, and I know he loves me. I want to make sure I get this right. I think about what to say, how to say it. The hospital is quiet at 7:30 on a Friday night as my brother, sister, and I make our way into the austere morgue-like basement to find our dad in a pre-op room, connected to more tubes and monitors. New colors join the green, yellow, red, and purple. Sky blue, bright white. The nurse says, Dad is awake and alert. We can talk to him. So we do, in order of age. My brother says, hey, Coach, you got this. And Dad nods with that look of determination. My sister adds, we're all here for you, Dad. Another nod. Then I approach and say, Dad? And as I'm about to go on, he turns his head, looks right at me and says, can you spell Chicago? I'm caught off guard, surprised at the force of his voice and the question. I think perhaps he's confused or delirious that he doesn't know what he's asking, but then he raises his eyebrows expectantly, so I dutifully spell it out. Chicago. And then he asks, and can you spell Tribune? My heart starts beating faster. Tribune, I say. And then in a tone I've heard hundreds of times over disappointment, small, medium, and large, Dad says, you didn't bring one this morning, did you? It's not a question. It's an accusation. It takes me a second or two to realize he's actually pissed off at me for not bringing his paper that morning. I don't have time to reply because the nurse says, I'm sorry, you'll have to go now. It's time to bring him in. I start to cry, and my sister wraps her arms around me as we make our way out of the room. Did you hear that? I ask. Not sure I heard it right. After decades of trying to please him, 6 days of cleaning out his condo, and the last 12 hours of doing everything I can to make sure he survives, I cannot believe he's mad about a fucking newspaper. But the thing is, I also know he is. We go to the family waiting room where another family is waiting, a big family, multiple generations, parents, kids, grandkids. They bring in huge tinfoil containers of food and bags of chips, talk loud, watch Everybody Loves Raymond reruns on TV. My brother, sister, and I retreat to a smaller room. We do not talk about the Chicago Tribune thing. We read magazines my sister brought, complain about the uncomfortable chairs. We make up stories about the other family to pass the time, give them names, identities, create conflicts for them that do not exist. We talk about our own kids, we laugh, we cry. I think about all of the families and all of the hospitals all over the world facing situations like this and how I've rarely thought about this before. And I ruminate over my father's last words to me, knowing deep in my heart he was not delirious. He knew exactly what he was doing. He didn't ask me how to spell the two words together, Chicago Tribune, because that would have given it away. My dad set me up to feel stupid and inadequate because he was mad I didn't bring him a newspaper. And the thing is, I get it. His world suddenly got small, and he needed me to bring him the rest of it. Life became uncertain, and he needed to confirm today was just another day. In his mind, I had one job, and I didn't do it. I'm sad and angry and hurt, and I'm afraid. I'm afraid he's going to die, and the last words he'll have said to me will be about a newspaper. I'm afraid that all I will remember is failing him when I was trying so hard not to. Not just at this critical moment, but all my life. 7.5 hours after I spelled Chicago Tribune, the door to the waiting room opens and the surgeon walks in, face pale, shoulders hunched, clearly exhausted. The surgery was tough. Lots of adhesions. Dad's body cavity was indeed full of shit. They couldn't make the repairs, so they've had to seal things off, and he's got another bag. But he's alive. He will live for almost another year, facing complication after complication, crisis after crisis, giving us ample opportunities to practice getting that final conversation right. Some go poorly. But in the end, we talk about the things that truly matter. My father and I make our peace, and the last words we share are loving and kind. I am eternally grateful for this. And yet, every time I see the masthead for the flagship paper of my hometown, I think CHICAGOTRIBUNE. And I remember the pre-op conversation with my father and all it symbolized. And it occurs to me, perhaps my dad was not the only one with problems holding on to stuff. It's time to let this go.
Anastasia Hipkins, everybody.